seen yesterday in Parliament, where there was a toing and froing, and finally we had the debate on it and the voting, where we saw that now that particular bill has sailed to the second reading, now waiting just the next reading, and goes to the President for assent. A lot of amendments have been made so far, but people were saying, no, that does not make any discernible difference. But to some, we shall look at what is the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. And today, also remember, it's not only Kenya, but Uganda and Tanzania and the entire East Africa community, which will be reading their estimates as well. And so we have a lot that we'll be covering on this, just looking at the finance bill and the budget estimates. People are saying this is just ceremonious occasion because a lot of it has been in the public domain, and we just hear what the minister has to say regarding some of the contentious issues that will so far have been debated in the public. I'll be joined this morning by Bill Okero, who is a businessman, also Professor Gitoro Wanaina, who is the School of Business, University of Nairobi professor. We'll be joined as well by Bunyasi Sakwa, who is the chair of Vision 2030, and will be joined as well by Dr. Shemo Chodho, who is the chair of Kenya Diaspora Alliance. So we have a lot that we have to cover, and I join you to run the show with me this morning. You can actually head over to our Twitter handle. KTN News is our Twitter handle, and at Dibala Nair is my handle as well. You can follow me to chime in, express your questions, and of course we shall be beaming that in the course of the program. But let's see what is on the front pages of the dailies this morning, and we'll begin with the Standard, which is looking at the budget this morning. Inside Ruto's budget, we have the numbers broken down for you so far, and it says here, all eyes on President Ruto's top moneyman as he presents his maiden budget in Parliament this afternoon, even as focus remains on soaring cost of living and political battle to meet expectations of hustlers. A demographic at heart of head of state's campaign into power last year. And then that story is tucked away on page 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 11 of the budget No, that story is tucked away on page 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11 of the daily today, which is the Standard. The numbers on either sides of the publication is also put up there for you, for your crunching. We have 1.4 trillion shillings. This is the recurrent expenditure. We have 714 billion shillings. This is development expenditure. We have 720 billion shillings. That is the budget's deficit. And how cash is shared out? 2.16 trillion shillings national government. We have 385.5 billion shillings. That is the county government. Also, we do have 40.4 billion shillings. That is what has been given to Parliament, and 22.99 billion shillings. That is for judiciary. And we can see an insert here, President Ruto and Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. 3.6 trillion shillings, total amount of President William Ruto's first budget. Right, actually, this was 3.5999. So the budget stands at 3.6 trillion shillings. That is the correct amount, aside from what we had given you. And total amount of other key figures that has been given is 9.6 trillion shillings. The current national debt, which leaves the government with only 400 billion shillings borrowing window against 720 billion shillings deficit. Now, there are key amendments as well. 12% excess duty on mobile money transfer, down from an initial proposed 15%. And also we have 5%, the new withholding tax on digital content. Monetization down from 15%. And also what was proposed earlier was 15%. Now that has been revised to 5%. As you can see, those were some of the amendments. Let's look at the teaser on top. President's aide gunning for top global job. And this is all about shipping and logistics. And you can see the unflappable smile there of Nancy. She is, of course, gunning for that top global job. It's all matters blue economy and the marine. And Trump in big fight of his life. This is on page 28 of the Standard. Also remember, real estate comes in handy for you every Thursday. Marathon big shots, miss out. This is another story that you want to follow inside the Standard as well. So this is how it looks, the front page of the Standard. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. And it's all about Ruto tax paying points. Here it says the Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u will today read President William Ruto's maiden budget as his administration gears up to deliver on his election promises, even though some of the tax proposals have come up against stiff opposition. And while Dr. Ruto says we must all endure the pain before things get better, a majority of Kenyans are already feeling the pinch of the high cost of living. Will he relieve their burden? That is a probing question that is on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Now, let's just see where the VAT and some of the levies will be hitting hard. MPs retain proposal to increase VAT on petroleum products from the current 8% to 16%. This will have a ripple effect on the economy and also translating, I should say, to hit high transport and good costs. That is the goods costs, transporting, that is the transport sector will be adversely affected. Housing levy, MPs amend bill to lower levy from 3% to 1.5%, but they remove the 5,000 limit for both employees and employers. Workers will also not get a refund of their contributions. That is a story that you want to follow inside the Daily Nation this morning. Tax turnover, bracket of businesses eligible goes up from 1 million shillings from 500,000. But upper limit raised to 25 million shillings from 15 million shillings. Turnover tax also increased to 3% from 1%. Pay as you earn. MPs create 2 new pay as you earn tax bands. Employees earning between 500,000 and 800,000 to pay 3 or 32.5% pay as you earn, while those making over 800,000 shillings will fork out 35%. That is according to the budget estimates that will be read today as well. All right, before I proceed, let me just rope in our guests who are here. I'll show you what we have on the front page of People Daily, the Star, and the Business Daily as well. We'll cross over to Uganda to read what is on the front page of the Daily Monitor, and also the Citizen in Tanzania and in Rwanda as well, the New Times. We have with us Professor Kituro Wanaina, who is a professor, School of Business at University of Nairobi, as I mentioned earlier, and also we're joined by Dr. Shemu Chwodo, who is the chair of Kenya Diaspora Alliance. We'll be joined by Bunyasi Sakwa and also by Bilokero. Professor, I can see you're knocking back your coffee up and early in the morning.
I'm not a coffee man. I don't know why we messed up with the coffee, but I don't.
You don't?
I'm a tea person.
Or you're a tea person?
Shy.
Shy.
You know the joke, in Kenya we export the coffee. We drink the tea. So coffee is largely for export.
Okay.
I'm well.
So today is a big day. It's crunch time.
I think the deal is done, so it's how we are going to prepare ourselves for it. I don't see anybody saying no in that.
But looking at the development yesterday in the House as well, what would you say?
One, I think the were constrained. You have a 294 document. What they did in Naivasha, Korea team, I would imagine is probably not substantial. It's really saying like instead of 3%, we are pushing it to 1.5. Yes. But fundamentally, we haven't addressed the fundamental part of it. So there's not much change in my view, perhaps. Looking at it, I don't see much changing. Yeah.
All right, and this is happening across the region today. according to the East Africa
Yeah, they all do at the same
protocol.
Same time. Yeah.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Shemo Chodo. What's new?
The BAL, it's
Do diasporans also get to benefit from this budget?
a little bit, not too much.
Maybe for the Office of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs.
Yeah,
Yes.
could be better. But maybe in that regard, now that you mentioned diaspora, the big thing is happening in town.
Well, let's just begin first of all with the budget today before we go to diaspora.
So for the budget, I think I concur with the professor. It's a done deal, basically.
Yep.
And for the housing levy, which seems to be the biggest issue, while I'm glad it was reduced from 3% to 1.5%, the removal of the capping is problematic. But overall, I also reiterate a concern a number have expressed that government deciding, I mean, it's our way or the highway, it's easy to go through. It may even go through the courts, but it becomes problematic to implement because you need to move the people along with you.
Right.
So when you want to transform a country, you need your troops, of course, the lieutenants coming along, but more importantly, the foot soldiers also believing in that vision and moving along. So yes, we're happy to see this budget happen, but I didn't see as much in it. The cost cutting that's required, we should be the first point to say, look, let's all tighten our belts. I didn't see much of that. That's what I would say.
All right, so it's a matter of tightening our bells.
Right.
Let's see, just I'll take you back to what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Ruto tax paying points. As I had just read it earlier for you, you missed out seeing it, how it is well laid out on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Kenya Kwanza wins House vote as Azimio mounts court action. Right, so we can also talk briefly about what was happening or transpired in House yesterday. That is the National Assembly, where we see the bill has been passed now to the second reading. Quite a very dramatic scene that we saw yesterday. Now, the Kenya Kwanza is mulling over a court action. Do you think if this will be of any seminal value if they move to the courts?
Well, no. One, it's important to really understand the process in the sense that if it doesn't go through, then the government doesn't start spending. And therefore, there must be a way to make sure that it goes so that the government can start. And if you recall, we are now getting to the financial year. It kicks in 1st of July. And therefore, it must therefore be passed so that the government can really start spending. As Sham is saying, our senator, it's good he brought it to court, but I don't see it going far. And as we say, we have it now, the budget there. How do we manage ourselves? As the people say, how do we tighten our belts? It's like when you take off, and I remember Mohamed Nyaoga saying, the plane has taken off. So when it's there now, make sure that you're stable on the air. That's it. And there's something in government, and I recall Nikal, who at times you hold here, now the member of parliament, that government is an elephant and also a chameleon. Oh yes, it can change things overnight, or if it wants you to, but it can drag and drag and drag. So you forget it. I'll give you an example. Look at the Mackenzie, the kind of killing which are happening down at the coast, Kirifi. We seem to have forgotten it. So the government just goes slowly. So the issue of going to court, I would advise the senator, let's move on. Let's see how we can actually utilize, and I think that's a point we need to make, Diba. How can we prudently utilize what we are going to collect? My view is we do have resources. It's how we use it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we have resources is how we actually utilize it. That is what Professor Gituro Wanaina is saying. But let's just follow up on the debate that was on the floor of the House yesterday, how it really panned out and why the Azimio brigades, they're now mulling over to actually take it to the courts, their contentious finance bill 2023. Let's just listen in.
When you tell us that you want Kenyans to feel pain now, I don't know, they will go to heaven soon or start enjoying themselves. It reminds me of Shakahola, Mr. Speaker. That is what the people of Shakahola told people. They told them, sell all your assets, come to us, starve and suffer in pain, then die and see heaven. Mr. Speaker, we do not want our hustlers to die. We will speak for them. They are suffering enough, Mr. Speaker. This bill, we cannot allow it to continue hurting them more than that, Mr. Speaker.
This finance bill attempts to raise 289 to around 300 billion. Mr. Speaker, how then do we raise these programs, Mr. Speaker, and all the people of Kenya, regardless of where they live, whether they live in Azimio zones, they require roads, they require medicine, they require fertilizer, they require programs to lift their lives. How else do we finance and grow the economy of this country? The people of Kenya must be able to sacrifice a little bit.
On the housing levy, Honorable Tiende brought the element of it being a county function. And I think we consider that seriously. But I wanted also to say something, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in addition to the fact that this is a county thing, it is not defined clearly how you will benefit out of your contributions into this levy. And I think in as much as some people may want to push it, let us define. If it were not a tax, Honorable Speaker, it would define how you benefit. We are levied for NHIF, NSSF, and others, but you can benefit. How are you benefiting directly on this? If you are not, Honorable Speaker, I fear we may be going into violation of Article 40 on people's property rights.
We have been able to give our farmers fertilizer. The question that we must ask as this House, as we debate the finance bill, what is it that we have a problem with in terms of the expenditure? Honorable Speaker, we have to support the revenue side of the budget because, Honorable Speaker, that is where we draw the resources to be able to take our Kenya forward through infrastructure and any other kind of development that you are undertaking. Going through this bill, you see an attempt to not only ridicule the hustlers or the poor Kenyans, but to actually kill them. Why do I say so? So, Speaker, we all know that this country relies solely on fuel and petroleum products. Every facet of the economy is driven by fuel and petroleum products. And therefore, the moment you set out increase VAT on fuel and petroleum products from 8 to 16%, you essentially mean that the cost of living is going to skyrocket automatically.
Percent of our revenue goes towards paying the loans that we owe. And therefore, we can decide to choose. We talk of subsidies to continue. We talk of less taxes. Yes, you can choose to go that direction. But the question you should ask yourself, for how long shall you be able to sustain the subsidies? And I hear people saying, when we reduce taxes and we continue to give subsidy, we attract more investment, and then the country is able to grow. I want to ask you, reducing taxes is just one of the factors, but there are so many other factors of production. You will need to provide accessibility, that's the road. You may need to provide electricity and many other factors. So it is not automatic by reducing taxes that we shall be able to spur growth and improve things. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say this finance bill, as I support it, that I support the position by Kenya Kwanza.
All right, and that is, of course, what was there yesterday. Well, you remember, today is actually the first time that Professor Ndung'u will actually be stepping up to the rostrum to read the first budget of the Ruto's administration. And this is touted to be the largest budget ever for this country, standing at 3.6 trillion shillings. Let's hear what he had to say before stepping up to the rostrum today.
In a matter of hours, all eyes will be on the National Treasury building, and particularly on the Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, and his team, as they face an eager audience keen to hear what their strategy for bringing down the cost of living is. But with the finance bill having generated grave public interest due to its tax proposals, Treasury now says Kenyans may just have to bear it as a necessary pain point.
This government has agreed, has indicated that it's going to pursue fiscal consolidation going forward. So the balance has to be then, how do we raise resources? It means we must take some pain, a little bit of some taxation.
On his part, Professor Ndung'u noted that there will be no any quick fix, but a slow and steady process, even as the government moves to cushion the most vulnerable through a budget that he says is the most significant, coming at a time when the economy continues to grapple with global shocks.
The bottom line is that we need to turn around the economy. We need innovative solutions. Who is suffering most? Those at the bottom of the pyramid. What kind of policies can we ignite for them? That is, lower the cost of living, make life perhaps, could I say, palatable by coming up with multiple and diverse set of solutions to lower the cost of living.
For the man who was once at the helm of the central bank setting the country's monetary policy, it is now a daunting balancing act that could make him a darling of the people or their enemy as he navigates what he has termed as a perfect storm as the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury.
So the budget, in a sense, creates a policy space. That policy space must ignite the turnaround that we are looking for. But it's not just the turnaround, it's also creating a momentum for sustainability. But the most important thing is to understand that it is not a one-shot game. That's one. Secondly, it cannot just happen in the morning.
Now, for the two gentlemen at the helm of the National Treasury, that is CS Professor Njuguna Ndung'u and the PS Dr. Chris Kipto, they say they have heard you, they have done their part, and tomorrow it will be the D-Day for them now to be able to unleash what they have prepared for the country. Jimmy Mbogo, KTN News, Nairobi.
Quite a fierce debate it was yesterday, and now Azimio, as I've mentioned earlier, they're threatening to actually move to the courts to try and scupper the whole process. Let's see how that will pan out and hear what they had to say as well.
The Azimio coalition is not done with the finance bill despite few amendments to the bill. The coalition has maintained the budget proposal remains flawed beyond redemption.
Yale yako mengi ni mabaya. Sasa uwezi kufanya amendments kila kipengele. Ndio kwa sababu tunasema hii bill si bill mzuri, ni bill mbaya, itupuliwe mbali.
Coming at a time when the bill is going through a major debate in the National Assembly, Azimio has called on Kenya Kwanza MPs to change heart before voting.
We have reviewed issues that are affecting the country at the moment, particularly the issue of the budget.
As we said earlier, no amount of amendments can redeem this bill.
We are reminding Kenyans, this budget will hurt them where it matters most.
Should the bill be passed,
Azimio will be busy taking the next steps.
But what I can assure you that all members of parliament have been mobilized to vote against this bill.
It's been a battle between the two coalitions for the past few weeks. Azimio hitting hard on their Kenya Kwanza counterparts, accusing them of not putting into consideration what Kenyans are going through. Oparanya announced that a people-centered budget by the coalition would be ready soon.
We believe in a people's budget. We believe in the rights-based budget. The budget is coming. Kenyans will have the people's budget.
Odinga had previously urged President Ruto to withdraw the bill and apologize to Kenyans for the anxiety it has created. Daniel Karaoke, KTN News, Nairobi.
All this cacophony and kerfuffle, as they will put it, about the finance bill is all about the coffers that is running on empty right now. So, as far as this particular budget is concerned, being one of a historic budget that has ever been read in this country, It is largely flying in the face of what the Kenya Kwanza administration has been pushing as an austerity measure, because right now we're talking about 800 billion shillings or thereabout as far as the budget estimate is concerned, which is far much higher than the previous administration. But why are we in this financial straits? Let's just hear from the control of budgets as well.
And the staff, you want to say thank you, and you maintain the same spirit.
If the revenues do not come in, then they prioritize recurrent expenditures and leave out the development. And that's how we end up with a very low level of development. Number two, like I outlined in the presentation, is that they are supposed to raise own source revenues, which are supposed to pick up some of those expenditures. But again, we have issues with own source revenues. They are barely scratching the surface. So again, that is a big problem why development is lagging behind. So we are working on all this concurrently. From where we are, we are like a household where the parents have overborrowed. They went to the SACCO, they went to Fuliza. So now there is no money. So even if you ask, do we blame Baba or do we blame Mama? Is it really going to help us? We just need to get away out of this. We know that the Treasury would be willing to give the money if they had it. But when the revenues do not reach the levels that we expect, then they can only release what is available. So much as we may throw the blame and say, yes, they did not give the money on time, they probably didn't have an otherwise.
So whom do we raise accusatory finger? Is it now the governor, as she puts it, or Mama, right? And that's where we are right now as far as the coffers are concerned, suppressed on-source revenue from the counties, yet we need to stimulate growth in this particular devolution sector of the governance of this country. But let's also hear what the president had to say when they were holding the Kenya Urban Forum in Nakuru, the first ever forum regarding housing and urbanization. And of course, largely the topic was about housing levy, which it has been revised from 3.5% to 1.5%. And now the debate is it a tax or a levy? And that also has been a seminal question. But let's listen in to what the president had to say.
On Wednesday, President William Ruto pitched camp in Naivasha, Nakuru County, where three important events were taking place. The first event was the Engineering Partnerships Convention, the second, the Kenya Urban Forum, and the third, the opening of the Naivasha Modern Market. With these three events coming amid fierce debate on the Finance Bill 2023, President Ruto seized the opportunity to defend the bill that, if passed, will detail how his administration will spend and collect money from next month. At the Engineering Partnerships Convention, the president faulted engineers for what he described as lukewarm support for the bill, despite some of the proposals in the finance bill, among them the housing agenda, set to directly benefit them.
I am surprised you guys are quiet. I have not heard your voice. You are the people who are going to benefit from the housing plan. You are the people who are going to implement our superhighway. You are the people who are going to implement our universal health coverage. You are the people. Now you guys want me to do the heavy lifting and you want to sit at the end and reap the benefits. That's not fair.
At the Kenya Urban Forum, the head of state drummed up more support for the housing program, saying it will play a crucial role in the growth of existing and new urban centers.
I hear some people say, how is building a house in the city going to help me. I am living in some rural place. They forget that the people who will be living in those cities will either be their children or their grandchildren, and they have a choice whether these children will be going to live in slums or they will be living in some decent housing units.
And at the launch of the Naivasha Modern Market, the president, who is seemingly developing a liking for counter suits, maintained that the bill would sail through and asked residents to watch him deliver promises he made while on the campaign trail.
Na unajua kuna watu walikuwa wanafikiri ile housing tuliandika katika mpango yetu, ile mambo ya county aggregation and industrial parks tumeandika katika manifesto yetu, walikuwa wanafikiri ni gazeti ya kufunga nyama. Ile manifesto ni mpango ya kubadilisha maisha ya wananchi wa Kenya, na mimi nitahakikisha we implement every page and every article of our manifesto so that we can change the lives of the people of Kenya. Tunaelewana jameni?
The bill is now at a do or die in Parliament, where on one hand, members from the opposition have called for its withdrawal, while those from the majority government side have vowed to pass it into law. David Muthoka, KTN News.
All right, it's gaining momentum, of course. Now, sentiments from the president regarding the housing levy as well. But what is the common Mwananchi saying on the ground regarding today's estimates? What is there, or what are their expectations? Let's just listen into also the fishermen and their frustrations and also their optimism regarding this particular one.
This is Dunga Beach, a landing site for fishermen. Ahead of the elections, the fishermen had high hopes that their livelihoods will improve under the new regime. And with the inaugural Kenya Kwanza budget to be read in Parliament by Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u, the fishermen, though still struggling, hope that their interests will be addressed.
Tutakuwa tunauza aje hii vitu ama hii nini ambayo tunafanya kama biashara, lakini hadi wa leo ama hadi wa sasa hakuna chochote ambacho serikali imetufanyia, na ukiangalia sisi kama wavuvi tunateseka sana upande wa security, ambao watu kama maskari wa Uganda wanaingia hadi mahali ambapo tunatoka kama hapa Dunga.
Tulikuwa tunafikiria tukuletewa cold storage, tunaweza bei ya samaki inaweza kuwa vizuri kwa sababu tuna mahali pa kuweka samaki. Hiyo hatujaona mpaka wakati wa leo, na hata wavuvi wenyewe vifaa ambao wanatumia kushika samaki bei huwa inapanda kila mara.
Sisi wenyewe serikali iliambia sisi kutusaidia kama kitu loans na loans za maengine yenye tunaweza vua nayo baharini. Tumemaliza mwaka mmoja hujaona chochote.
However, fishermen at the lake feel that the proposed excise duty on imports may just serve them a relief, as they are not able to compete with the low prices of imported fish at the markets.
The China fish have really affect the fishermen due to the price. The price is very cheap compared to the fresh fish. So we are getting, sometimes we don't have the bargaining power.
Homa Bay County, that enjoys 60% of the lake, was poised to receive a modern market and a 400 million shillings fish processing plant. Kisumu County promised a 2.5 billion shillings Kabonyo Kanyagwal Fisheries and Aquaculture Research Center. Bramwell Bwire, KTN News, Kisumu.
So largely we've heard from the faces behind Ruto's budget, and this is also what is on the front page of the People Daily this morning. Faces behind Ruto's budget. Tax and spend. After voting 176 yes against 81 no on finance bill last night, MPs are back in chamber today when CS Njuguna Ndung'u reads Kenya Kwanza's first estimates amid opposition. This is on page 2, 3, 4 and 5 of the People Daily, and of course you can see the faces. You've heard from some of them. 3.68 trillion shillings total budget in shillings that Ruto government will present today. 257 number of MPs who voted on the finance bill in second reading, and we can see him hard at work here. Treasury and National Planning Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u working on the budget documents yesterday ahead of presenting them to MPs this afternoon. Kuria Kimani and Ndindi Nyoro, the Finance and Budget Committee's chairman, respectively, have been instrumental in preparing the estimates. And of course, you heard from the Controller of Budgets. This is Margaret Nyakango, who also gave her view as far as this budget is presenting the Control of Budget report yesterday, which was being launched, and she talked about also the issues that are affecting our economy. That is People Daily today. Also, as Mio leaders to present on pro-people budget. All right, we'll have that discussed as well. What will this be, the pro-people budget? Will it be alongside the presentation of a budget today? And will it make any substantial difference? That's a People Daily. And also, we can look at what is on the front page of the Star report now is that State House spent 8.5 million shillings daily on hospitality. State House spent 8.5 million daily on hospitality, almost 1.5 billion shillings gobbled up by Kenya Kwanza administration. This is according to the Star. If we may just have it on the screen as well. And we have the flagger reading, visits. President has been hosting dignitaries and clerics. President has been hosting dignitaries and clerics. That is what we have on the front page of the Star this morning. And we have Mackenzie disciples, stage 10 or stage 10-day hunger strike in cells. This is what he's saying as well. And you can see a very telling picture there. If we may have it on screen, that would be nice, of a Paul Mackenzie follower who's being supported by police after staging a hunger strike while in the cells for 10 days. Also on the side by Ruto to Haji, use your intelligence skills to deliver. And a big blow to betting sugar importers and media in new budget. That is what the Star has for us this morning as well. Ataokoa au atanyonga. Ataokoa au atanyonga. That is what Taifa Leo is having for us. If we may just have it in full so that we can have an easy reading as well. And it says, macho yote leo yako kwa waziri wa fedha kuona iwapo atawapa Wakenya nafuu au kuwafinya zaidi. Ni roho mkononi kwa Wakenya. Waziri wa fedha anapoingia bungeni leo alasiri kusoma makadirio ya matumizi ya fedha za serikali. Hofu hiyo inatokana na mswada wa fedha 2023 wenye mapendekezo tata ya kuongezea mzigo wa ushuru wakati huu ambapo wanakeketwa na makali ya kupanda kwa gharama ya maisha. So we are waiting to see ataokoa au atanyonga. Right. But looking at that question, today is purely ceremonial because already we know what the finance bill is all about. So it's up to you to see if you've been nyongwad, so to speak, or you'll be saved, or you have been saved as well. Let's hear what Mwenyezi Sako has to also say about today. Good morning, good to see you.
Morning, Debal. Morning, colleagues. Today is an important ceremonial day, but not so important that I could miss this session, preparing for it and so on. So I think it's going to be not a crest. We are somewhere in the trough. I think so much has been debated and discussed to date, and I think as far as I can recall, this is probably the most debated season towards leading up to the budget, which I think shows a great awareness on the part of Kenyan voters going forward. So I think we should see good things in terms of public participation. But I don't think there'll be much surprise in terms of what the minister has to say, because a lot of the substance is already in the public domain. What will not be there that will have any consequence is a parallel budget. By anybody, by any quarter, that are likely to...
the people's budget.
The people's budget. To have a people's budget, you have to have a people population. And you have to have a people's government. Those are very difficult things to achieve. So for me, I think it's going to be a moment for reflecting more deeply on the things that are going to be law, as it were, for the coming year.
Right. So from your own assessment, umenyongwa ama umeokolewa with this budget? Just bear out your heart, to be frank.
No, hatukunyongwa. Tuko tu sawa.
Buko tu sawa?
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Bilo Kero umenyongwa.
Hatukunyongwa.
Bilo Kero is shaking his head.
Hatukuokolewa. Tuko tu sawa.
It's worse to be lukewarm.
No, unfortunately, that's what life is all about. We don't operate at the fringes. In public policy and in public discourse, you don't operate at the fringes. You're going to find an operating center.
Right.
And that's why I'm saying, sio kunyongwa wala kuokolewa.
Suseme jina lipi sasa?
You know, Jesus said, don't be lukewarm. You're neither hot.
Hapo katikati.
Kiswahili changu si kizuri kutosha. Kiswahili changu si kizuri kutosha. Sijui utaitaje.
Tafuta hiyo jina sioni. Hiyo katikati.
I think it is in, maybe it's in the religious domain, when you are neither in hell nor heaven. Something so in between.
There's nothing in between. There's nothing.
That's Bill. Yeah, either in hell or heaven.
It's very binary. So there's nothing in between. Bilo Kero, umekatana na hiyo mambo yako. Yeah, it cannot be at the center.
No,
good as you. Good morning.
Well, I think it depends. If he speaks for himself, yes. You know, I mean, you can say as an individual, I'm not affected. But when you say Sisi, as Kenyans, we different much altogether. I think as Kenya, it's a very sad day. Really, I mean, when I watched those MPs passing that finance bill, I was very disappointed. Not that I was surprised, it was expected. But it's very unfortunate because you're looking at a nation where the cost of living is so high, people are struggling to stay alive. I mean, and you're seeing millions facing starvation for lack of food in some regions in this country, and millions without jobs, without incomes. And you see them live on TV every day. But, you know, we ignore all that and we say, let us tax today. More taxes, make the cost of living more expensive, you know, with the promise that the future is going to be better. I mean, honestly, that is, you know, in this world, you live one day at a time. You tell somebody, you know, somebody put it very aptly in social media and said, look, I think it was in Parliament, or it was in Parliament. And he said, if you're asking Kenyans to suffer today so that tomorrow you'll be in heaven, it's like the Shakahola massacre thing. I mean, that's what he told, Mackenzie told his followers, that look, die today, tomorrow you'll be in heaven. You'll be happy.
He should be the first one to die.
He should have been,
he promised people everything.
So I think it's really unfortunate that the government has misled Kenyans on one fundamental thing. And they're repeating this lie every single day, that unless we tax Kenyans, we will never get out of borrowing. That's a lie. Because the government is borrowing daily as we speak today. Just look at the budget policy statement submitted by this government a couple of months ago. It says in the 5 years of this government, the total borrowing, additional borrowings that they want to take is 4.5 trillion. This is assuming they get all the taxes as projected. If they don't, that number will double. There's no slowdown on borrowing. But you're telling Kenyans, you know, we have to stop borrowing. So pay the taxes. I think that is completely, that's false. From what we have seen in the last 9 months or 7 months of this government, they're borrowing left, right, and center. And they've said so very clearly in their budget policy that they'll continue borrowing. So I think it's unfortunate that the cost of living is going to be very, very, very high for many Kenyans. And the changes that members of parliament made are cosmetic. Frankly, they have very little impact on the fundamental changes that they are planning to make. Things which will really move the cost of, I'll give you just 2 or 3 examples. Fuel, for example, you know, increasing the VAT by another additional 8% will impact on literally everything in this country, including transportation, production, and everything. The second is the construction industry. The same construction that they're talking about building houses. The 10% import levy on clinker, on metal, on paint, on furniture.
And cement.
You know, I mean, on paint, on cement, yeah, this clinker is on the cement, 10%, then 10% on metal, the wire rods and all those things for building. That will make this country's cost of construction the highest in the region. For example, when the clinker, taxes on our clinker is going to be 24%, the highest anywhere in all the 5 other countries is about 12%. When you look at the wire rods and those metals for building, the highest in anywhere, most of the region, Uganda and several other countries in the South African community, zero actually. In ours is going to be about 13 to 14%. So then you're also taxing on the paints. Then furniture, you're putting 30% excise duty. You're telling Kenyans, the little table that you used to buy because it comes from China and it was cheap, now you can't buy it. You have to wait for, to pay double the price because of. So I think, and then many others, of course, on the foods also you've seen, that some basic things that have adjusted excise duty on. So I think it's going to make life much more difficult for Kenyans. Not to mention that the taxes on payee for employees is going to be huge because of the many little things that they have increased, including housing. Housing and fraud. Housing levy is pure fraud. Pure fraud, let me tell you.
It's pure fraud.
Because they have now changed at the last minute in Parliament that it's no longer a levy that will be, a fund that will be independent out there, but it's going to be a tax, which means it will be swept into the consolidated fund. Consolidated fund, they'll use it to pay salaries. It will be the Eurobond. They'll be used to pay anything they want.
So that's what I'm saying. Initially,
If Bill has a bit of drama today.
Well, he's just bearing out his hat.
You say a levy is a tax. It means Treasury can use it for whatever they want.
At least Bill today has no demilitarized zone like you have. But so, can you see any political sleight of hand on this particular housing levy? Because initially they were startling denying that it is not in any way a tax, it is a levy. And so even the projection of 3.5%, they knew very well Kenyans will raise uproar on it. And so they made it
worse by two more things, apart from the fact that it's a tax, which will go to Treasury and you know what will happen to it. But two more issues again. No refunds. Initially you're told if you don't get a house, you can get a refund. They have removed that now. Then so the second, of course, you have no guarantee of getting a house. Of course, there isn't a chance in a million of you getting a house because of the amount of money and the number of Kenyans who are going to put in the application. So you don't have a chance of a guarantee of getting a house, and you don't have a refund because it's a tax. That's when no longer a refund is there.
Interesting. It sounds like a lottery now for these houses.
And even the numbers don't add up. Mheshimiwa, they said when they were presenting the member of parliament, the chairman, he said 50,000 houses annually. This fund, even though they reduced it to 1.5 because of removing the upper limit, it will still go to about 70, 80 billion or whatever. You try to see whether 50,000 houses will be put up by those houses. There will be 100, 200,000 shillings. You're not putting up a house on that.
No.
Yeah.
All
so anyway.
So this is purely a fraud according to Bill. So do you actually hold with this view as well?
The bill, we could have had a much better budget in my view. I wouldn't call it a pro-people budget, but I wouldn't be as skeptical to the extent of my good friend, Senator. But having said that, I rarely compliment Azimio. But in this regard, I compliment them for two things. One, they have elected to go to court instead of the streets. I think that's the right thing to do. The second, perhaps even more important point, although I think we were making a little joke out of it here earlier on, them presenting an alternative budget. I think last week or the week before, the Right Honorable former Prime Minister gave some 10, in my view, very important points. If I was part of government and I had my way, I would have considered some of those points, because that's what we call objective opposition is for. It's meant to give the alternatives that, yes, we have a problem, a national problem. This is the solution we propose. So to that extent, I give Azimio credit for giving an alternative, what they call the people's budget. I'm assuming they're going to expound more on the 10 points that were already laid out. But having said that, on the positive side, I am on the creatives and the digital side.
Yes.
I think, again, maybe unlike Senator Bill, I think I would commend the Finance Committee. They tried. I know they are also in a very hard place because they also have, I think, a gun on their heads. But they tried. They didn't quite succeed.
Who is holding the gun?
I guess the executive, of course.
themselves.
The executive, of course. And, of course, there were days when Parliament was Parliament. I'm happy to have been part of that time. I don't think I would say that of the current Parliament, where you are held ransom by the executive. But that notwithstanding, there are two wins for the digital sector. The reduction of excise duty from initial, I think, 15 to 12%. I would have been happier on mobile if it was done much more. There's also the withholding on digital content from 15 to 5%. It sends a good signal, even if it's only symbolic, that digital is the way to go. But other than that, as I said earlier on, I think implementing this budget is going to be problematic because I don't think government carried the people along with it.
Just an observation on withholding tax on digital. You know, it can be misleading. Withholding tax on digital content is not the final. So that means you're actually going to, if you are a corporate business, you'll still pay 30% corporation tax. Withholding tax will just be the amount that will be deducted in advance to be offset against that tax. But if they had, for example, treated it like withholding tax on interest, on dividends and others, make it the final, that means then those digital content creators would be paying only 5%, nothing else. But in this case, no. They only, withholding tax is just an advance payment, but they will still pay the tax, the full amount.
That's why I called it symbolic.
Symbolic, yeah.
But you see, there's something, Diba, here. There's some people who make things looks, I don't know what to do, but they have a plan. At the end of the day, we'll give concession to certain things, so I look good. And I'm not quite sure the high tone we had of this budget was not a very calculated move, that we are going to give in certain things. We look good. And if you look at, there's an interesting African proverb, which I wanted to share down the road. It says, unlike the brain, the stomach at you when it's empty.
It's a good one.
Are we reaching somewhere where the stomach is empty? And I don't know what shame you mean. What do you mean by, I mean, Paranya is also saying the same. What do you mean by people's budget? And I think it's a mistake we make. You think those guys care?
Which guys?
Sorry?
The position.
The one coming with the budget, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I look at Kuria, Kimani Kuria, I happen to know him. Poor, very young man, okay, but here we are being having, you have the gun, as he says. And Azimio, fine. In my view, they should have come very early. Not even last week or whatever. The budget we knew is about, takes a process, starts early, pretty early. Let them come in, let's tell the government, yes, here we can do A, B, C, D. But you don't come so late in the day.
Yeah, to come with the pro people.
And
as a shadow, they have their own shadow cabinet and they
so
present their own
pro
people
my
government.
reading here is
so
Bill,
we compare and see.
Yeah. Bill is trying to give me a very contentious budget. So at the end of the day, he conceded on a few things and say, oh, Bill is great. But I think it's important to really utilize the African profile. Yes.
That's a quick one. I think the best metaphor to use in this case, the treatment of a boil. You know, when it's actually really painful and, you know, it grows a little, is it pale or red? If you have to cure it, you have to squeeze it out, okay? And I remember those village doctors who were experts at it. They will squeeze it out irrespective of what sort of contortions and pains you go through. After they've done it, they're usually the best of the lot. Others will come and put a pad on and so on and so forth. It persists. I think the only way of curing a boil is that painful process.
Correct. Did you hear what Bill said regarding the Shakahola and heaven? Yeah, so we suffer now. This is the painful state that we are in.
Yes, but
the budget.
Nobody see the case of Shakahola. It's not a pain that the guy Mackenzie was even going through himself. So clearly, this is for others, not for himself. It's probably not. But anyway, let me go back to my point, which is that normally these references to friendly budget and people's budget, those are in the areas of populism. And these are difficult choices to make. I'm sure the Finance Committee, under the chairmanship of Kuria Kimani, he was one of our youngest, very bright parliamentarians, so I'm glad they gave him this responsibility. There's a lot of trading and trade-offs that you must do. It's not between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza. It's just within that committee. There's a lot of that you have to do. They have not done a perfect job.
What are you trading on here? Because I think that's, to me, is the thesis of the budget. What are you trading?
Very good comment.
Yes. In budget making, you're trying to, first of all, you're trying to clear out the deficit that would be between the realistic expenditure estimates you have made, because you might have to cut off that sometimes. You delay it a bit in that. That's one trade-off you do. And then on the other, we are saying, how can we clear out this in a way that is going to get least resistance? Some of it, you expect the resistance to occur in sectors such as the transfer of resources over time, implied transfer of resources over time, from the so-called well-to-do and rich to sort of support the Wanjikus and so on. And they will kick, they have influence, they have voice, they're looking at their standards of living being threatened, whereas the Mukuru Njenga resident is not looking to much to diminish. He's already near the base, as it were. If anywhere to go, it should only be up. How will that happen? If that transfer is targeted well, then it might lead to some net gains by these groups by a big sector of our population. Actually, it's a very big sector of our population. Now, I really think that we should look at this budget as a major step. We can't say long term, because the governments are not in for long term. They're all in for 5 years. 1 year is virtually gone. For budget making, the first budget has been made by this Azimio government. So what now we should expect is, which direction is this, it's not an Azimio government, it's an Azimio opposition, by Kenya Kwanza government, going forward now. How do they implement? The Treasury has the option during implementation period, or budget implementation period, not to implement all of the measures that were put in place. If, for example, the revenue collection should go better than they expected. 2, if the executive slows down the implementation of some programs, there's a lot of balls in the air.
Let me come in something I was asking to unpack. Before I forget here, will you allow me just to take a short break?
They can't tax more.
It is 7 o'clock on the nose. I need to come in when we come back.
Yes, you will circle back to
unpack
yes.
my thoughts in it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're taking a short break right now. You're watching Sokoni. And we, on the other side of a break as well, we want to broach the issue of some of the revisions that were there. That's we have a panelist also putting the thought that it was just maybe a band-aid solution, just to try to put some padding on it to mollify and pacify Kenyans as it is. Also, we've seen the president has given, or the state has given the indication that they're going to support and also help the investors in the housing project as it stands right now. Do you also know that as far as insurance is concerned, when you are looking for, what was it again? I've forgotten. There is, when you're given that particular resumption, what is it? The insurance, I forget the name. When we circle back, I'll come up with that appropriate name, but it has also been revised. This was very contentious. When you have a